Okay, it is time. Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog for our preview and predictions video for the ATP Finals, Semi-finals 2020, and boy, what a lineup it is. We've got Novak Djokovic, the top seed, against Dominic Thiem, and Rafael Nadal, the number 2 seed, against the very in-form Daniil Medvedev. So hope you're looking forward to these matches as much as I am. Couple things before we get going. If you're one of those people that typically skips to the prediction in my videos, if you come at a later date, probably not in your best interest. Since lockdown, I think the analysis has been pretty much there, but I've struggled a bit at picking out the exact component or point that's going to have the biggest impact on the outcome of the match. So my predictions have gone downhill slightly since last year. So it is in your best interest to watch the whole preview as opposed to just watching the prediction if you really want to get a good idea of how these matches are going to go. And also, I just want to say that the ATP Finals is one of my favourite tournaments at this point because we've got really consistent guys at the top of the game now where anyone can beat anyone over best of 3 sets. Best of 5 sets at Grand Slams, the big three are always going to have the advantage while they're still close to their prime because of their endurance, because of their mental strength, and that's the way it should be. Grand Slam should be harder, but over the past 2 or 3 years, we've really seen a steady sustaining of form between some of the younger players, Dominic Thiem, Daniil Medvedev, Alexander Zverev, etc. It's really exciting times for the tour, and the last edition of the finals was phenomenal. I was hoping that this one would deliver, and we have seen some fantastic clashes. So big up the ATP Finals, and I'm sad that this is the last year in London, hence the shirt, just representing GB. And I think that's about it. I think we'll get going with the preview and predictions, and we'll start with the afternoon match, the first matchup, which will be the top seed Djokovic up against the number 3 seed Dominic Thiem. Boy, they've had a few meetings now. Right, let's have a look at how both of them have got to this stage, how they've looked in London. We'll have a little look at the head-to-head, and then we'll have a discussion about how this one might play out on the day. So let's start with the lower-ranked player. Let's start with Thiem. I mean, he's ranked lower, but at the moment he's playing as well as Nadal and Djokovic. I've said countless times over recent months and recent years, Thiem has been closing the gap. And I think getting that US Open title in his pocket was probably the extra confidence boost he needed to properly establish himself alongside these guys. He was always nipping at their heels, he was upsetting them here and there, giving them trouble, but now I think he really sees himself as one of them, which makes this very interesting, and I think that the other guys on tour see him as one of them as well, one of the key players to beat. He got off to a pretty good start. It was a rematch of last year's epic final against Stefanos Tsitsipas, which he lost in a final set tiebreak, so it was big for him to reverse the outcome this time around. 7-6, 4-6, 6-3 in Thiem's favour. One of the major things for Thiem is that he sustains a high level of serves over his 3 matches so far. One of them was a bit of a write-off, and we'll get to that, but the key theme has been that high first serve percentage, and the way he's banging those serves down, particularly under pressure, has been really impressive. So that helped him out a lot, I feel, in that match against Tsitsipas. Again, he's become such a big moment player, and that was evident when he edged the first set tiebreak. All in all, there were frustrating moments for both players, but Tsitsipas is a guy that likes to move in. Obviously, his game style is a great fit for the conditions here in London. They do aid that faster pace and his ability to move up to the net and that kind of thing. So it was a good challenge for Thiem to face early on, and he showed that he is committed to the aggression required to really be successful here in London, moving in, using the forehand a lot. I think that Thiem is credited a lot for his backhand, his single-hander, and how solid and aggressive it can simultaneously be. But the forehand for me has been the real weapon here in London, particularly the off forehand, and that was on display in one of the best matches I've seen this year, and honestly, potentially the best straight sets match I've ever seen in terms of sustained level on either side of the net. That was against Rafael Nadal in his second round robin match. That was a 7-6, 7-6 win for Thiem. Pretty key given that it was against Nadal, who is one of those players who's so mentally tough and is always there for those big moments. But in a similar fashion to their meeting at the Australian Open in January, it was actually Thiem that seized hold of the big moments. So the tiebreak scores there were 9-7 and 7-4 in the favour of Thiem. And I mean, there's so much that can be said about this match. Again, we've seen across the board, really, for the players that have qualified for the semi-finals anyway, a high standard of serving, high first serve percentages, aggressive serves, looking to move forward behind those serves. And Thiem really made that first set close by utilizing the big serve and by producing some phenomenal 1-2 punches. Just the anticipation of where Nadal's return was going to go, his timing to use the pace that was coming back at him. He looked very comfortable moving into the court, and I believe that he was actually serving second in that set, so he was catching up as well and playing catch up and trying to keep up with Nadal, which was great. Great numbers for him actually in both tiebreak. I think only going with serve, I think there was only a gap of about maybe 1 point in the second tiebreak. But I can see that this is buffering. I don't want this to happen today. We always have the Wi-Fi issues, which compromises the quality of the video. Let's see if this is still going, because this is an important match to discuss. If you're here live, drop me a line to let me know you can hear me and that everything's playing okay. I can see the numbers of people watching are still here, so okay, I'm gonna presume it's fine. Right, so yeah, first set tiebreak, he was down 5-2, and Nadal was actually looking pretty secure, and thanks for confirming that everything is fine. Okay. Turning point of the first set tiebreak, Nadal, I can't remember whether it was the first or second serve, but he sent it wide. Now, a lot of the time, Nadal's going to favour using that big wide serve because he's a lefty, and he goes to it a lot under pressure, because even if the ball's coming back, it gives him that little bit of extra time to adjust, get on top of the ball. Usually, when that wide serve is going to the Thiem backhand, Thiem has to react to it, and a lot of the time the return goes cross court. But Thiem actually was able to position himself in a way that on this particular shot, his return went up the line, and Nadal wasn't ready for that. One of Nadal's key strengths throughout this match and throughout this tournament, and we'll talk about this when we go on to his match against Medvedev, is his anticipation, his being ready for the next shot in order to get good depth on the ball. And Thiem going up the line with that return might seem like a small thing, but from my perspective, it completely took Nadal by surprise. He was then on the stretch, and Thiem fired that off forehand winner that was such a theme for him throughout this match. He actually converted his first set point, having saved 4, with an off forehand winner that scorched the sideline out of nowhere. He was right far back in the court, and the rally was kind of anyone's at that point in time. So Thiem's willingness to go for it off that forehand wing really helped him out in this match. And I think the confidence was just there for him in the second tiebreak, having come through the first. He placed the ball very well when Nadal was at the net. Nadal was coming forward a lot. That's been a theme for him. And Thiem was able to just pick his moments, really, and come through that one. So for me, that was a tremendously impressive win for Thiem. And in sharp contrast, the match against Rublev was something to be forgotten very quickly. I hope she doesn't mind me shouting her out. My mum has become quite a big Dominic Thiem fan in recent months over the past year, and was tremendously disappointed by the lack of effort that he seemed to put into this, because Thiem is known for being so committed and such a worker, and he has been across the years. But I think he's probably got some smart people around him advising him at the moment, because he was in a very unusual situation here for the ATP finals, whereby this match completely did not matter for him. It didn't matter regarding whether he qualified for the semis. He'd already qualified, and it didn't even matter for where he ranked in the group. He was already top of the group. So I completely do not take that result into account when I'm predicting this next match, because Thiem turned up at 50% there, and I am pretty sure that it was intentional. It was a sharp contrast to his level against Nadal. The only thing that was similar, really, was the serve. He was driving into that serve. He was serving aces. He was serving unreturned serves under pressure. But once he got into a rally with Rublev, who was striking full out because he hadn't won a match yet and he wanted to leave with a win, it sounds wrong to use these words to go with Thiem, who is such an exemplary player in terms of the effort he puts in, but he could have been more bothered about that match on that day. He wasn't driving with his legs as much as he could have done. There was not the same intensity and the same grit and the same passion that we're used to seeing from Thiem. And you could see in the second set as it got close, the competitive spirit was just pulling and trying to be let out, but he did not want to waste energy on that one going to 3 sets. So that 6-2, 7-5 loss to Rublev, I don't really take too much from that in contrast to his other 2 matches. And we took a little while going through that. So let's have a look at the Djokovic run today. Now, Djokovic obviously lost to Nadal in straight sets in the French Open final, and I don't really think he's got his mojo back since then. Obviously, he had that tremendous run of form. We've had the season broken up due to coronavirus, but he's had a great start to the year in Australia, came back, played a lot of matches in the little hard court swing that we had over August, September time, was playing a lot during the clay season as well and won Rome, but since that French Open final loss to Nadal, something's been lacking. He hasn't really bounced back fully, and we saw that in his opening match against Diego Schwartzman, where Schwartzman actually got the first break of the match. And for me, this was probably a write-off win for Djokovic, because Schwartzman, as brilliant as he is better made for a clay court. That's where he picked up the majority of the points that got him to this stage this season. Made the Rome final, made the Roland Garros semis, deserved to be here, but indoor hard courts were never going to be in his favor. So Djokovic did take a bit of time to get going there. He did get the straight sets win, 6-3, 6-2, but he had to work his way into it. And when he did, he looks pretty good. I think that his serving has been smart and it's been effective. And he did move up the court there and he did try different things. We've seen the drop shot coming and going from Djokovic. Again, it's a bit hit and miss, but when he executes it brilliantly, it's breathtaking. So that was the opening win against Schwartzman. Then there was the loss against Daniil Medvedev, who was zoning in that match. Don't get that wrong. That was not just due to Djokovic not fully being with it. That win from Medvedev was fantastic. That match was on Medvedev's racket from my perspective. He absolutely pulled Djokovic around, played with him, made him feel lost for options, and that first serve percentage was killing Djokovic. The bombs that Medvedev was raining down on the way he was backing up behind them. So Djokovic did make a lot of unforced errors in that match. He finished with 19 winners to 28 unforced. And essentially, he just couldn't find the strategy to get past Medvedev. I felt that he actually brought some really great quality in the first set. I think it was close to peak Djokovic, actually, at moments in that first set, largely on his serve, though, largely when he had the control of the point and he was in the driver's seat. He mixed it up. He was reaching balls on the stretch. He was hanging in the long rallies. But as the match went on, those longer rallies that are kind of Djokovic's cup of tea, if you like, we're going more and more the way of Medvedev, who's so balanced and so solid. And I won't comment so much on this because obviously it's a key match for Medvedev, which I'll look at when we look at his meeting with Nadal after this one. But Djokovic, after he was edged in that first set, definitely was not at his best in the second set. He just looked a little bit flat. And it's easy for Medvedev's level when he is just slapping everything and when he is driving the ball. It's easy for him to make anyone look flat or out of things, really. But Djokovic is one of the best returners in the game, and he wasn't making an impact on first or second serve returns, really, in that set. He went down the early 3-love disadvantage, and that was it. It's not often that with a Djokovic match that you feel the match is over before it's over, but you did in that one. He just didn't show up to the party in that second set, and therefore there were real question marks surrounding him. He did have a good net point percentage there, so he will probably be looking, I think, to come forward a little bit more, especially against a player like Thiem. But again, we'll leave that for a little while. Zverev was the redeeming match for him today. Beat Alexander Zverev 6-3, 7-6. That was 7-4 in the tiebreak. He got his first serve percentage up. I think that serve, I'm mentioning the serve a lot, but that's going to happen when it's an indoor hard court and you've got the faster conditions that benefit that shot and make it so that the players can utilize that. I think that there were some tight moments, particularly in the second set, where Djokovic found brilliant placement both down the tee and on the wide serve to pull Zverev around. And I think the versatility that he has on serve and the different options that he has mean that that is a weapon for him. I think I've said this before. I think people underestimate how hard the ball comes down from Djokovic, and the indoor hard courts can only aid that. So that was definitely a big weapon for him. But I keep coming with these buts, but I don't feel like Djokovic was overly challenged by Zverev. Zverev had been in great form leading up to the Paris Masters final coming into this event, but he far from delivered during this tournament. He's one of the players here that I think will be disappointed with the way they performed. Didn't really show up against Medvedev, and then in this match against Djokovic, he just seemed very comfortable sitting back. And for a player like Zverev, you know, he's taller, it is a little bit harder to move up the court sometimes, but that was what he needed to do. And when he did move up the court against Djokovic in the early stages of the match, he lacked conviction, he lacked intensity, which meant that those moves weren't successful. And I think that put him off doing it more as the match wore on, which meant that Djokovic could get on top of the rallies from the baseline. He was absolutely nailing the lines at times. And all in all, I don't think he needed to hit his top level there because Zverev allowed him to play quite a comfortable match. Which is disappointing from Zverev's perspective, but Djokovic will take that ahead of what could be a very grueling match against Dominic Thiem. And it's a matchup where he leads the head-to-head. It is 7-4 in the favour of Djokovic. I've got the full head-to-head up here. Now, they've met a number of times on clay courts, actually, and most of Thiem's wins over Djokovic have come on clay, but Djokovic does lead the duels on hard courts. So they've faced off 5 times on hard courts, and Djokovic has been triumphant on 4 of those occasions. The most recent being their Australian Open final in January. If you remember that one, Thiem was playing at a very high level and looked like he could win it in 4 sets, but Djokovic, as he does, seized the big moments, pushed through on willpower and came through in 5. The meeting before that, however, was here at the ATP finals last season. Now, I can't remember it point for point, but it's a match that I vividly remember watching because as you watched it play out, it felt like the kind of match that Djokovic should win. Tight moments, players rallying toe-to-toe, long exchanges that would usually be in Djokovic's favour, but twice over in the two tie breaks that were played, Thiem was able to rise up. Now, Thiem actually lost that opening tiebreak. It was a long one. What was the eventual score? I think it was 7-5, I think, but long exchanges. It was a grueling match. And Djokovic got the edge in that first set tiebreak. And often when that happens against a player like Djokovic, the opponent will falter and they'll fall back and they'll start doubting themselves. They'll start changing their strategies. Thiem went after it and got that second set 6-3 and then got the final set tiebreak. And it was remarkable to watch because at that point in time, Djokovic didn't tend to lose those kind of matches. And not only did Thiem win it, but he stepped up to take it. It wasn't so much an issue of Djokovic dropping off. That said, I feel like over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, Djokovic has not been at his peak when he's come to London. And usually you can put that down to the fact that he's been one of the dominant players of the season. He's usually dominated over the period of the year. Can't say that so much this time because of the break with lockdown, but he has played a lot of tennis, more tennis than most of the players present. And he did have quite the run going on hard courts and clay courts, actually, since the tour started back. So I do feel that in his kind of spirit and demeanor, there is something lacking from Djokovic. Yeah, he had moments of sheer brilliance against Zverev, and in some of his other matches as well, actually, I mentioned about his start against Medvedev looked very impressive, but it's not the consistency that we're used to seeing from Djokovic. It's dips and rises, it's coming and going. And I'm not sure how convinced of his own form Djokovic is. He's not going to let on, obviously, because he's got 2 more matches this season now, and he might get that extra boost of energy to see him through, but there does seem to be something missing for a player like Djokovic, whose standard is usually so high. Thiem, on the other hand, I fully think that he dropped his level for that match against Rublev intentionally to conserve energy for this testing semi-final and for the last 2 matches for him, he would hope. And if he brings that sky-high level that he brought against Nadal, he should be winning this match based on the form that we've seen from both players so far. So based on what we've seen in London and the fact that something does seem to be missing for Djokovic at the moment, I would take Dominic Thiem to win this match and return to the final for the 2nd straight year. He was going to have to really step in and attack as he has been doing. The forehand is key. In his match against Nadal, let me just get the stat, he hit 37 winners and 23 of those were off the forehand wing. So I think we're going to be seeing Djokovic targeting the backhand of Thiem, and I think that Thiem's going to be ready for that as well. I think he's going to rise to the challenge. I do think that the first set is more important for Djokovic, because if Djokovic doesn't take the first set, we could see a Medvedev-style match in which he doesn't really have the energy to fight through the second. So if Thiem wins the first set, I can actually see him winning this in straights. It might be tight though. But based on the fact that it is Djokovic and that their recent hard court matches have gone the distance, I think I'd better give Djokovic an opening here and say Dominic Thiem to win this match in 3 sets. Now, thanks to everyone watching live. Thankfully, it seems that if you're in the UK, you do late Friday nights. So if you're here at the moment, drop a comment in the chat and let me know what you're thinking of the analysis and who you'll be predicting to come through these matches. 1 down, and we come to the second match, which is, for me, the harder one to predict, actually. I didn't think I'd ever hear myself saying that in a hard court semi-final where Djokovic is in the mix, but here we go. Rafael Nadal against Daniil Medvedev in their 4th meeting. Nadal, the number 2 seed, Medvedev, the number 4 seed, but Medvedev playing a really high level of tennis. And both of these two, and I'm saying it now, Djokovic has the status, but he hasn't hit top form here. Thiem, Medvedev, Nadal, brilliant level at times from them, sky high during this tournament, which is particularly impressive from Nadal because we know the troubles that he's had on this surface over the years. Indoor hard courts, because he prefers a higher bouncing, slower surface, has traditionally been his worst. But he's really stepped up this week, and I've been deeply impressed by the level that he's brought to the table. And this is the only really big title that he's not won before, so he's going to have that extra motivation to get across the line here. Medvedev, though, has never beaten Nadal, but has come very, very close, including here last year, so that's his motivation. And I've swung back and forth on this one like a pendulum. I know I swing back and forth on a lot of matches, but not like this one. Not like this one at all. I'm going to take a drink before I get going on this one. Okay then, let's start with the lower ranks. Let's start with Medvedev. He started out against Alexander Zverev. It was a straight sets win for him, 6-3, 6-4. And he looked very comfortable there. They just faced off about a week prior. So yeah, pretty much exactly a week prior, they'd faced off in the Paris Masters final. You'll remember that I actually did a preview and prediction for that one on here. That one did go the distance. I said that it would be Zverev in straights or Medvedev in 3, based on how both were playing at the time. Zverev had the confidence, but he didn't have the stamina left. He'd played a lot of tennis, and Medvedev got that one in 3. So having been so recent, you would have expected this to be a closer match. But no, Zverev just didn't turn up. And he tried to be honest, early on, but I think his serve let him down in some key moments. There were some key double faults from Zverev that went a fair way to deciding the opening set because it had been pretty close. But going into the second set, Medvedev just started to play with him. Zverev was trying to mix it up, actually, using the slice to give Medvedev different looks coming into the net, and Medvedev was loving a target. He was really on points on the run and on the stretch, and when Zverev had his body up at the net. And Also just looking really comfortable in the baseline exchanges. And this is where it becomes really interesting because I feel like Medvedev is really getting into his stride and hitting his peak form. And when Medvedev's in peak form, there's not a heck of a lot that he can't do. Not a lot at all. He's for a tall guy, he's 6'6". And I feel like a stuck record, but in those longer rallies, he's incredibly balanced, which means that he's often in position to do whatever he wants with the ball. He moves up the court, he uses the angles, he uses the down the line, and with Zverev and Djokovic both, I feel like at times in those matches he was just playing with them. He was so comfortable that even in the Djokovic match, where Djokovic went through options, there was nothing he could really do to unbalance Medvedev, and that put him in a really sticky situation. Big thing about Medvedev, we come back to the serve, tremendously high first serve percentages. So in the Zverev match, he put down 67% of first serves, won 74% of those, and won a whopping 63% of second serves as well. Against Djokovic, it was 71% of first serves with 80% won. Now, that's against one of the best returners in the game. And yeah, we can say that Djokovic wasn't at his best, but he wasn't at his worst either. I think they were closely matched at moments in that first set, and Medvedev really got on top of him. And then the high second serve percentage won by Medvedev, 75%. You've got to break that down and see that it was 50% in the first set and 67% in the second set. So it does show that Djokovic kind of taken a step back and not called it a day, but he was more of a presence on the court than an opponent at that point, and therefore it was easier for Medvedev to hit down those serves. But one of the things that makes Medvedev so lethal is the difficulty that players have in predicting where he's going, whether it's off the serve or whether it's off the ground. He's such an unorthodox player. He doesn't move like a lot of the other players. His backswing is quite low. He takes the ball quite early, and it's very difficult to tell which way he's going to go, which is made even more difficult on an indoor hard court because the ball is traveling that bit faster and often that bit lower as well with the way that Medvedev strikes the ball. Djokovic really struggled with that. He tried to pull Medvedev out of position. The eventual scoreline, by the way, was 6-3, 6-3. Not sure if I mentioned that. He tried to move him around the court, but Medvedev, he's got big strides, so well balanced and hits so low that when the angles came to Djokovic at the net, he was in a difficult position because those angles from Medvedev travel so low. I was talking about it at the time, if anyone follows me on Twitter. The way that Medvedev is able to produce the angles with such a low ball, whereas compared to some of the other players, if they're in a particular position on the court, for example, if they're closer to the net and they want to try an angle on the ground stroke, they have to apply a lot more topspin to get that ball over the net. For Medvedev, it really doesn't seem to matter. He's got some kind of magic touch. And yeah, he looked very comfortable against Djokovic and Zverev. And against Schwartzman, I was a little bit surprised because I thought he might do a Dominic Thiem there and not give it everything because he was in the same position, qualified for semis, qualified top of the group. He was playing for pride essentially, and play for pride he did. And I think you could tell the relaxed nature of the way he went about that match. This was just a short while ago, actually. I had it on at the side because I didn't really know how things were going to go, but Medvedev went all out, 74% of first serves, 88% of those won. He slapped everything, essentially, and that's largely what he's done at times in all of his matches throughout this week. It's devastating. His forehand and his backhand down the line, very flat considering it's going over the high part of the net, and the angles that he can whip as well. I think that something that's going to be pretty key against Nadal also is his return, but I'll comment on that a bit more when I talk about what to expect in the match. So we'll head over to Nadal, the number 2 seed, and yet to win this title. So yeah, he'll have some hunger. He started off against Andrei Rublev, who did leave with a win here after the team match and had a match point actually in his match against Tsitsipas. But a good start for Nadal, and again, we come back to the serve. Big serving performance was the standout in that opening match. 72% of first serves landed, which I think might be his highest to date. I'm just checking. It is 82% of those won. I think Rublev was a little bit deer in the headlights, wasn't fully sure what to do during that match, but Nadal also won 67% of second serve points. He didn't face any break points, so it just showed you what a force that serve was. And then he was clean at the net, didn't lose a single point at the net, which just shows how he was able to set up so offensively that when he went to the net, it was just a case of finishing the point off. He wasn't putting himself in any dangerous positions there. So confidence boosting start for Nadal, which is exactly what he needed against Dominic Thiem. And I mean, I've already spoken about this match, but he had nothing to show for a really crazy high level of tennis that he produced in that encounter. Had the lead in both tie breaks, obviously, as I mentioned. Had 2 break points the whole time, when one of them, Thiem, I don't think had many more. He had 5 break points, and Nadal actually saved 4 of the 5 break points he faced. It's an area that Nadal has become very good in because he's upped the aggression on his serve. I think other areas of his game, you can argue about whether he's peaked there, whether he's on the decline, whether he's on the rise. But with the serve, I think it's the best it's ever been. Tremendous kick into the body under pressure. That big, wide lefty serve gets him so many cheap points because he can follow up aggressively and quickly behind it as well. And he'll have been pretty devastated not to have a set to show for it. But in true Nadal fashion, with his great attitude, he did take the positives from that match and the high level that he was able to produce throughout. And he said after the match that one made him believe that bit more, that he could actually win this whole tournament, which was I thought a great way of looking at it, to take the positives of that performance. The margins were so fine in that one, but I think the manner in which he lost it actually might be key coming into this match, and I'll explain why when we go to analyze it. But it was tremendous all-court tennis in that match, and Nadal really showing off his touch at the net, his versatility up there, and the way he's really working the first shot behind the serve, his 1-2 punches, getting him a lot of cheap points. And the same thing happened against Stefanos Tsitsipas, where he, for the most part, did sustain that level that he brought to the team match. Obviously, for both him and Tsitsipas, this was the knockout match. Whoever won went through, whoever lost went home. So it was key for him to keep playing offensively. Because Nadal is more suited to a slower clay court game style, you do feel that if he's to ease off the gas a little bit, as was shown in the back end of this match, then he's going to be in a bit of trouble. But so far, he's been so focused and so intense. And up until he won the first set 6-4, edged some tight moments at the back end of that, but up until 4-5 in the second set, he was looking supreme on serve. Tsitsipas had won a literal handful of return points the entire second set. And then Nadal went down love 40, serving to stay in the set, which caused me to raise an eyebrow, because Nadal is not normally the kind of player that responds to scoreboard pressure. He's usually very focused and very mentally strong, but clearly there was some tension there for him, and you can give Tsitsipas a lot of credit for that, because I felt that from both of those players, actually, the level throughout the first set at least was very high. Tsitsipas was also going for it behind the serve. He was hitting some fantastic 1-2 punches. He was feeling the backhand very well. And it really was a case for him of being mentally strong to hang on and keep holding his own serve until he got his chance in the second set. So we've seen in both the Thiem match and the Tsitsipas match that Nadal does still have some issues when he's up against the big serve, because there are less opportunities for him to break through. And then it could lead him to the point where he's under scoreboard pressure and things get that bit tighter, as in the tie breaks against Thiem and as in that second set against Tsitsipas. Now, I had been thoroughly impressed by Nadal throughout this tournament. For me, he was a lead title contender, and might I add, still is a lead title contender for me. I think he's right up there and could well take this thing. But I was started to get a little bit concerned about him just because of the way he lost that second set and began the third set. Now, every player has a dip, okay, in a tennis match, however supremely they're playing, whether it's for a couple of points or whether it's for a game, every player will have a dip, and because it's difficult to focus for that length of time. And Nadal was, I think, just unfortunate that his dip came when it did in the match, but it did show that he's not immune to that kind of outer pressure of the scoreboard and the opponent serving well and hanging in things when really they should be out in straight sets, as was the case with Tsitsipas. And therefore, when they went into the third set, there was a flurry of breaks, and I did feel for Nadal that it was starting to get a little bit more gritty and a little bit more clay court from him, as opposed to the hardcore, offensive, aggressive tennis that he'd been playing previously. He was relying on the Tsitsipas errors that little bit more, and I might be sounding picky here, but with the form and the status of all these players that are left, it could come down to the little picky things. It could come down to the narrowest of margins. And a key thing for Nadal against Thiem and Tsitsipas has been his ability to anticipate where the next shot is going, to cover it, and to send his next shot back with depth. His depth of shot, when he's not being dictating from the offset, has been brilliant. It's kept him in a lot of points and enabled him to turn them around just by taking that bit of time and that bit of positioning away from his opponent. And in that deciding set against Tsitsipas, that depth of shot wasn't quite there. It was landing the ball was landing a little bit shallower in the court, and I do think that he needed a bit of a helping hand for Tsitsipas to get back on track. And when he was back on track, he was fine. He got the big points, and he got the win there in 3 sets, 6-4, 4-6, 6-2, but it was just that little wobble at the beginning of the 3rd set and the end of the 2nd that made me question, because if he hadn't had that wobble, I'd probably be predicting Nadal to win this match, given that he's 3-love up on the head-to-heads, given that he's worked himself through some other situations where the odds have been stacked against him. See the French Open 2020, phenomenal run from him. People play him down on indoor hard courts all the time, and I think based on the way he's played on them last year and this year, that's very unfair, because Nadal has worked hard to adapt his game to these conditions. And for me, he's now in a position where he could win this tournament. But so is Medvedev, and that's what makes this a really difficult prediction to make. So if we look at the head-to-heads, Nadal is 3-love up, and all 3 of their meetings came in 2019. So actually over the back few months of last year, first meeting came in the final of the Canada Masters, and that was a comprehensive win for Nadal, 6-3, 6-love. You might raise your eyebrow at that, with that being on hard courts, but I don't think any player can fully prepare for the first time that they come up against Nadal, because he's such a different player. The topspin, the intensity, the mental fortitude, you can't really prepare for that until you've faced it. So not really a surprise for me that Medvedev got wiped off the court there, but that 2019 US Open final, I've said it before, turned from a comprehensive win for Nadal into one of the greatest tennis contests that I've seen. Was it highest quality all the way through? No. But boy, was it dramatic, and Medvedev really, really upped his game, upped his level to get back into that and nearly win it. There was a moment at the back end where I thought he had it. The eventual scoreline was 7-5, 6-3, 5-7, 4-6, 6-4 for Nadal. And I distinctly remember how he came through that match, because at one point Medvedev was redlining in a similar way, really, to what we've seen from him in London this week. The attack, the way he can generate angles from deep in the court or near to the net, the way he drives to the corners and stretch Nadal out, making it impossible for Nadal to get any kind of depth on his defensive shots. And he looked unstoppable for a number of games, and you could feel his momentum building. And Nadal did what he does best. He thought his way through. He was very smart, very strategic, and he just started knifing backhand slice after backhand slice to take the rhythm away from Medvedev, to make him have to play longer rallies and to make him have to generate his own pace. And Medvedev did start making mistakes, and that enabled Nadal to just get out in front for the win in the decider with the 6-4 sets. Not the first time, well, it was the first time that Medvedev got close but failed to come through against Nadal. It wasn't the last, because we saw another one of those stories here last year, round robin stage. I don't think it was not the 3rd match, but it was a match in which Medvedev had the advantage. He was 5-1 up in the decider, and Nadal came back to win it. The eventual scoreline 6-7, 6-3, 7-6 in the favor of Nadal, coming back from 5-1 down in the decider. And if I remember correctly, again, he did it by mixing it up and by moving him around and by frustrating him. Now, the question is, can Medvedev be that easily frustrated now? It does flash warning bells to me that, or ring them Do they flash or ring? I don't know. Flash warning lights? Either or, take your pick. But it does give me a warning that Nadal twice has been in a position on hard courts where he could lose to Medvedev, and he's been able to go through his skill set in order to come out on top. This is undoubtedly going to be the toughest contest for Medvedev so far, because he's faced Zverev, who wasn't really feeling it and was easily frustrated, Djokovic, who took a step back after losing the first set, and Schwartzman, who's better suited to a clay court. So he, for sure, has not faced as big a contest as he will face coming in to face Nadal, Medvedev. So this is going to be tough. And the thing that makes it tougher is the fact that Nadal has more options. Now, Zverev and Djokovic did go through their options in order to try and trouble Medvedev, but Djokovic didn't have the form, and Zverev did not have the repertoire of Nadal. There is a limit to what Zverev can do. His peak level is fantastic and blows players off the court. Anything below that isn't all that impressive. Whereas for Nadal, he has multiple options. He has plan B, plan C, plan D. And as we saw with the 5-1 comeback, he doesn't give up until the match is over. So you start to weigh it up. You think, okay, well, is it going to be the grit and the smartness of Nadal that comes through? Is it going to be him serving big and waiting for his moments and pouncing on them? Or is it going to be the knockout tennis that Medvedev is playing right now? His service numbers really can't be beaten by anyone that's still in the tournament. They're getting him a lot of free points. The 1-2 punches are lethal and very hard to anticipate just because of how quickly he takes the ball. So Nadal is going to be at his mercy a lot in that department. Yeah, Nadal can return well, but as well as Medvedev serving, can he anticipate? It is easier to exploit Nadal on the return in these conditions because of his stance, because of how far he stands behind the baseline. And I'm not the kind of person to get at Nadal for this, because I think on the whole, and people don't give him credit, it's actually a very smart thing. It gives him that little bit more time to adjust behind the return because he's got it deep. But the ball comes that much faster in these conditions, and I think that it will be easier for Medvedev to catch him out than if they were on a slower surface. He's also shown that he can go up on Nadal before, and Medvedev's an improved player from this time last year, which is an interesting point for me to consider because he did come so close to beating Nadal last year anyway, but he'd actually dropped off his peak. He'd had his peak over the American hardcourt swing last year, and in London he didn't pick up a single win. He's been born again this year. He's gone 3 wins to 0 losses in the round-robin stage, so this is a different Medvedev that we're seeing. For Nadal, I think he has upped it that bit more in terms of his intensity, in terms of his attack. Cannot understate how impressed I've been with him. But something stands out, and it's the fact that in the few moments where it's got tight for Nadal in a close contest, he's actually not come out on top, which is unusual and slightly surprising given how well he's been serving. But when he's had to serve in high-pressure situations, it's not quite been as potent. He played 2 tie-breaks against Thiem, lost them both. He was serving to stay in the set against Tsitsipas the only time, and he dropped serve. Unusual, but it's there in black and white. It's what's happened. For Medvedev, I did feel that that stat might be the big thing in his favor, because this one could be very close. You've got 2 players here that can rally for days, that can also fire terrific 1-2 punches, and that can mix it up as well. Medvedev's angles are going to really put Nadal on the run. If the rallies go beyond 1-2 punches, both of these guys are going to be ready to go with it. Nadal might have a little bit more versatility, but Medvedev doesn't mind moving around the court. He keeps his balance. And because I expect this to be very tight, I thought that the key thing that might decide it is the service stats, and the fact that however well Nadal has served, Medvedev's numbers have been that fraction bit better. And with the way that Nadal's faltered in some big moments, I thought that that might be this deciding factor. But then I swing back to the fact that Nadal has gritted his way through against Medvedev. He has frustrated him. He has he's a confidence player, Nadal, and he has the confidence from having got those wins over Medvedev previously. So I think I've seen quite a few people writing Medvedev down for the outright win here, and I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as people anticipate. I think that people are still having that mind, that vision of Nadal as the clay court player, and Nadal hates indoor hard courts, and they're not properly taking into consideration the phenomenal level that he's brought to this tournament. And it's tough, you know, this is really tough to call. At first, I thought I'd go Nadal. Prior to coming on, I'd pretty much decided to go with Medvedev based on those service stats and based on the way he's whacking the ball, and will make it very difficult for Nadal to anticipate in order to get the depth of shot on his defensive shots. And now I'm back to very unsure, can see it going either way, can see both of these guys lifting the trophy. But I guess I have to bring it down to the fact that if I'm unsure on it, and the service numbers are slightly in the favor of Medvedev, as they were against Zverev in Paris, and I predicted against him anyway, I think I'd probably better give Medvedev the benefit of the doubt here. Which is, you know, interesting for me. I don't predict against Nadal often, I don't predict against Djokovic often, but I think based on how Medvedev's played, if you're ever going to give him the benefit of the doubt, might as well do it here, where as well he's down 3-love on the head-to-head. Anyone who's watched my videos before will know that I'm skeptical when a player that is that good is that far down on a head-to-head. It happened against Zverev in Paris the other week. Zverev was dominating the head-to-head, and I said at the time, even though I didn't predict Medvedev to win, I said at that around that kind of point, a player as talented as Medvedev has to break through, because head-to-head shouldn't be that lopsided. I can see Nadal going 4-love on this one. I think it's still near enough to the beginning, but I think that Medvedev is playing as well, if not better, than he has done in previous meetings against Nadal. So I think if I'm unsure, better give Medvedev the benefit of the doubt on this one, based on him having the edge on some numbers that could be key. So I'll actually say Daniil Medvedev to win this match, and I'll say in 3 sets, because I think it's going to be tight. But I want to emphasize that I can very much see this being Nadal's year, and 100% can see him coming through this. I can, if this goes long, I can see him, you know, using the drop shot, coming to the net a lot, mixing it up and frustrating Medvedev. Another key thing was that Nadal's been moving forward a lot, and Medvedev did like a target against Zverev. But yeah, because I can see this going either way, let's give Medvedev the shot and see how it goes. I'm feeling slightly nervous because I think this is the first time ever that I've predicted against 2 members of the big 3 when they've been in semi-finals against opponents outside of the big 3. Usually these guys are so reliable, but you know, the level that the likes of Thiem and Medvedev and other younger players have been bringing to them across best of 3 sets, it does make it that bit much more unpredictable. And that's what we like to see at a tournament like the ATP finals, which is a tournament between the best of the best. It's going to be interesting to see how these 2 play out, and I'm looking forward to watching both of them. May it be high quality tennis. And that brings us to a wrap here. So thank you for watching. I know it's been quite long, but there's so many layers to both of these matches, and they're such intriguing matchups that I thought I'd give it the time of day or night. Leave a comment and let me know what you think of the analysis and the predictions. I mean, you can say that both of these 2 are really hard to call. But for me, Nadal and Medvedev was the real seesaw, because so many factors sent it back and forth. Just a quick note, I would hope to film a preview and predictions video for the final, but Nadal Medvedev is the last match on at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and I have a feeling that could be a lengthy one. I don't want to be filming too late, and I don't film on Sundays, so there is a slight possibility that I won't be able to do a preview and predictions video for the final. Keep an eye out on my social media and on the channel to see if that's the case. If that is the case and I don't have time to film a final preview, I will make sure to film a final reaction video instead. If I still have my voice, I can feel myself losing it. So thank you very much for watching. Leave your comments as to my analysis and predictions, and whenever the next time will be, I will see you then.